Hey everyone, I'm Joe and today I'm going to be doing a review of The Hidden Face by S.C. Flynn. Now, first of all, this is a very new book. It's actually only released a few days ago in November 2017. As far as the genre goes, this is classified as fantasy. And this is a first in a series called The Fifth Unmasking, of which I predict there will be either 3 or 4. And I read it on my Kindle, so this is an ebook, so a picture will be on screen now if it hasn't already been up. So, first of all, I'll explain about the idea of the series title, The Fifth Unmasking. So, basically, roughly every half a millennium or 500 years or so, the god Akan takes human form. And when the god does this, it becomes known as the face of Akan. And when it does this as well, it no longer remembers that he's a god. He becomes very naive and very human, frankly. And the purpose of this is that when this happens, it will go to a particular kingdom in the world. Normally, it's one where the face has been born into. And it will essentially boost that kingdom up through aid to the ruling classes, through technological ideas, or through any other advances that current face has the ability to produce. And that kingdom does extremely well for the time that the face is there, and indeed for the rest of the time up until the next unmasking happens, because that kingdom is basically like the leading kingdom of the world for those 400 years or so. And the book starts off in the one kingdom that had the previous unmasking available. So this was the big kingdom in the world. And it doesn't really want to lose this advantage because, of course, having the previous face boosting up made the kingdom have brilliant trade relations and technological advancements, and now it's starting to fade. And of course, this kingdom, the same as every other, would quite like it if they could basically manipulate the face of Akan and make it come to their kingdom and essentially give their kingdom this boost rather than the one that the god initially intended, frankly. Which, is not surprising. So there's a lot of sort of intrigue behind people trying to figure out and trying to find what and who the face of Akan is. Of course, this is very, very difficult to do. In fact, almost nobody is able to do it, although there are certain people with certain advantages, of which comes up in this book. So that's the history before the book happened. And as far as plot goes, I'm not going to say too much about it, other than say the main two characters are a young guy called Davehaven and a young woman called Suneva. Now, they are part of this kingdom. He was sent away to another kingdom as a kind of prisoner, essentially like a royal prisoner for a number of years, and has just come back. And Suneva is a interesting character who knows about combat, let's say. I'm not going to say too much about her history because it's quite interesting anyway. And essentially, they have to team up when they are asked, essentially, to try to stop certain events from happening to do with the face of Akan, let's say. And they end up going on an adventure, and it goes from there. I'm not going to say too much else about the plot. There are numerous characters that you meet in the book with various allegiances and indeed various sort of types of mind. There are the stereotypical good characters, bad characters, grey characters who are sort of neutral, neither good or bad, they just want to get stuff done just because it needs to be. And there are some characters who are completely unknown. You're not sure if they are good because sometimes they might appear good, sometimes they appear bad. They're a bit mysterious, and I like this mixture. I mean, obviously all fantasy books tend to have these four types in. But in this, I think it works particularly nicely because some of them are defined really well and some of them aren't. And I like that mixture of these character types and what they are capable of doing and what they're not capable of doing. It's quite an interesting mix. Another thing about this book is the fact that it's not dark and depressing, which frankly I find a lot of modern fantasy generally is nowadays. You know, you always have characters constantly betraying each other, and I'm not necessarily referring to a Game of Thrones here, you know, in George R. R. Martin. I'm talking many other fantasy books that I've seen in the last 10 years or so. It seems to be very much about darkness and characters always betraying each other and all sorts of intrigue behind the scenes. This has a little bits of that, but it's much lighter than the general way modern fantasy is, and I like that fact that this book is more fun, frankly, than many modern fantasy, because it's not so dark and depressing, which I am not keen on dark, depressing books, unsurprisingly. The things that I liked about this book was the writing style. It was well paced, and the characters went through the story in a sensible way that you can actually believe. They didn't do anything really weird, and indeed that helped with the fact that the story was a good story as well. You know, the reasons for the characters doing what they're doing, and indeed the reasons for the overall countries wanting certain things to happen, are made nice and clear. And I like the fact that it's clear and clean. And frankly, this is something I really did appreciate. And another thing relating to the country is the fact that the idea of the world, and indeed the way the countries interact and such, was described and introduced in an interesting way at the start, and I like the basic premise. However, it wasn't delved into quite as much depth as I would have probably expected, going by other fantasy books. However, whilst this could be considered a negative in some ways, because it would be nice to see a little bit more depth in certain areas. However, some fantasy books go into too much depth and they sort of veer off the point. They'll start telling you great depths of information about the country and such. This doesn't. And whilst it'd be nice to see a slightly bit more, to be honest, I'd prefer it slightly more this way than the other heftier way, and you end up with an 800 plus page monster book, frankly, which can be really hard to get through. This is a much shorter book. It's only 300-ish pages, and you can read it much faster, and it's just easier to read and frankly enjoyable to read as well. Oh, and another little thing that I liked about the book as well was the fact that the characters had puzzles to solve throughout the book. These were quite practical puzzles and things, and this is something that you don't see that often in many books, especially in more recent years, as I've said previously in this video. And the fact that they had to solve these puzzles was quite interesting and a nice touch, frankly. Albeit some of the puzzles they did solve a bit too quickly. You know, they were introduced and then they solved them sort of almost then and there without going away. It would have been nice maybe to have a few of these puzzles where they introduced them, then they had to go away and go to other areas and then sort of come back to them maybe. But you know, that's only a small thing, and you know, it's easy enough to forgive. Very easy actually. So overall, this is a fun and fast-paced book. It is a good fantasy adventure with a good, interesting plot, and with very good promise for the future series, of which I am quite interested to read as and when they are released. So overall, I would recommend this to fantasy fans who are looking for something a bit faster and a bit lighter to read than the usual heavy-going books, and something just frankly fun. Frankly, I mean, that's the main thought about this book that I have, is this book was fun to read, simply. And with that said, that is it for this review. If you've read this book or you would like to, then please leave a comment and we can have a discussion. All my social media links can be found in the description box below, as they always are. With that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.